is, I wrote it down somewhere. Yeah, that's it right there. So that 87.7 is equal to my frequency times my wavelength, so 1.224 meters. So my frequency is, I think we're gonna get closer. This is gonna be exciting. It's supposed to be 60 hertz. What do we get?
71.65.
Okay, not as nice as I was hoping. Anyone get 60? So we're about 20% off. Sure. It's physics. All right, questions here before, Kimberly.
How do you get the 6.07?
Once I figured out the mass, by just adding that stuff up, and let me double check to make sure that I did that correctly. Oh, there is a mistake there. So the mass was not 620, it was 570. Which changes that number. Change that number. And once you have it in kilograms, weight is equal to mass times acceleration due to gravity.
Oh.
That's where it comes from.
So have all of our answers will change?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, so that was 570, so that's 0.57. So
5.58.
5.58. That, which makes this 5.58. Change that, change that, change that. So what's our new speed?
84.09.
And then we divide by 1.224. 68.7. Thank you. So now we're about 12% off. If we keep finding mistakes, perhaps we'll eventually get it perfectly.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
5.58 divided by 0.00789, you got, 7078. 7072 would be 70.72.
Would you took the square root?
Oh, yeah,
Oh,
that would make sense.
That's the square root. All right. One more thing I want to cover. Questions before I hit the last topic I wanted to cover? Imagine a very still pond. You throw a rock into the middle of it. You get this ripple coming out. So I take a rock and I throw it there, and so this is the first moment of time where the rock first hits. And then sometime later, there's a ripple that's now this big, and that ripple keeps going out, and then the ripple will be this big, and pretend that these are circles, and then, so it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. So when the ripple's this big, I throw a second rock and I hit it smack dab exactly the same place as I did before. So there's going to be a second ripple that starts here. And it's going to get bigger and bigger. So when the first two waves or ripples are like that, I throw another rock and I hit smack dab exactly in the exact same place because I'm that good when I make believe. So that will get bigger. So if we look at this last scenario here, so this is just some moment time, this is sometime later. I've got these 3 ripples that are all appearing on this very still pond. The distance from here to here should be the same distance as from here to here. If I'm hitting the rock in the center at some regular time, in other words, at some period, then the distance between there and there are the same. In this scenario though, if you imagine the ripple, that is where the wave is peaking. So if I have a wave like this, I can represent it from my overhead view by just drawing a line at the peaks. And then halfway between, there's nothing. Halfway between the peaks is the trough. It's just understood to be there. I don't draw anything there. So these would represent the peaks of a wave. Questions on my drawings before I change it? All right, same type scenario. I throw a rock and it hits on some particular spot right there, and the ripple starts moving outwards and then gets bigger and bigger. This time when I throw the rock, the second rock, I don't throw it to the exact same spot. I do it a little offset. So the second rock I'm going to throw here. And then that will get bigger, centered around that spot. Well, if you notice, the distance between those 2 peaks is much smaller than the distance between those 2 peaks. This has a smaller wavelength than this side does. Well, the speed of the wave depends upon the medium, so it would be water in my scenario here, or the temperature of the air, if I'm dealing with sound. But the speed is pretty much set by whatever you're playing around in. And that's frequency times wavelength. If my wavelength gets smaller, my frequency gets bigger. So as wavelength gets smaller, frequency gets bigger. This is the Doppler effect. As something is coming towards you, so if you are, say, a bug sitting right here, that's my bug. If you are on the right side of the drawing here, you're going to be hit by the waves more frequently than if you were on the other side. The bug here hit more frequently than a bug sitting over here. The higher frequency, the greater frequency of waves, or the higher frequency as we would perceive it, results in a higher pitch. So as a car comes towards you, as it comes toward you, it's a higher pitch than as it goes away from you. Now, if the person if there's a car coming past you, and he has his hand on the horn, and the driver has a hand on the horn, he's going to be hearing the same frequency because he's not getting closer or farther away from the sound of the horn. It's still relative to him. So he will hear some particular frequency, but you on the side will hear a higher frequency as it comes towards you, a lower frequency as he goes away. We can take this one step further. First rock you throw, it starts creating that ripple, which gets bigger and bigger. The second rock you throw, this time you throw it outside the first ripple. And so that will get bigger and bigger. If you throw another rock that's, again, just outside that second ripple, that'll get bigger. But think about what's happening here. What is happening here? I got 2 peaks hitting at the same time.
get built up bigger, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
constructive interference is what you're shooting for.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets bigger. In other words, if it's this is sound, how would we register that it's bigger?
Maybe louder.
Yes. So now imagine that instead of having a rock being thrown, say, every once a second, you have this happening 400 times a second. You've already heard what 400 times a second sounds like when I played 400 hertz. You have all of these peaks massively building up on each other. And what is that called? I was hoping somebody had seen it already. That's a sonic boom. When you're traveling faster than the wave itself, it is creating this huge amount of constructive interference of wave after wave after wave. So it's this incredibly intense pressure, which you would hear as a boom. So if you're standing on the ground here, if you have a supersonic jet, I'm not making it look obscene. You know what, it's going to. You have a supersonic jet flying along like this. The faster it's going, there's this ridge here, a cone, that the faster you're going, the narrower the cone is. So if it's just barely going over the speed of sound, you might get a cone that looks like this. And so you'll first hear the boom at that point, and you'll last hear it when the plane is now over here. If he's going even faster, it's a much more narrow cone. We can go for the stunning visual effects. It's a more narrow cone. And so you're first going to feel that incredibly high amount of pressure at that point, and then it's going to end when the plane has gone farther. Now it is traveling faster, but it will be a more intense because there's more buildup. Generally, the faster it's going, I would think that the engines are louder than they were. And there's a Mythbusters where they're trying to see if they can break glassware by doing a sonic boom over a house. They were able to if the plane is flying really low. Anyway, that's the sonic boom.
That it was going faster than the wave?
Yes, so faster than the speed of sound in this example here. And with the whip, you can actually break the sound barrier by, you propagate the sound, you propagate a wave on the whip because the rope gets narrower, the linear density drops, because for the same amount of length, you have less mass. As the linear density drops, the speed increases, and all you need is right when it gets to the tip, it has to be going half the speed of sound, and then you got that free end. The tip is going to basically quickly go from this spot to this spot at double the speed that the wave was traveling, and that's the one point when you break the sound barrier, and you get the loud popping noise. So, there's the old adage of what's the sound of one hand clapping? Well, if you can break the sound barrier, it sounds like a sonic boom. No telling what damage is done to your hand, but it is theoretically possible that it would sound like a sonic boom if you go fast enough. Just try to picture the muscles you have to do that. Anyway, we will stop it on that note. I think at this point I've covered everything that's on the master set. Again, for those who missed it, problem 14 on the 19 through 21 master set should not be there. Problem 14 should not be there. But if you want to do it, go for it. I'll give you feedback.
you know you're rigged up there.
Okay.